Happy New Year. I hope 2024 is already off to a wonderful start for each and every one of you, filled with smiles and laughs. And I believe it's my responsibility to give you something to frown about to kick this year off. And I guess frowning is the wrong word for it, because it's actually something very bittersweet. Tom Scott, one of the best and most beloved YouTubers on the platform, posted a video today stating that after a decade of weekly uploads, he's going to be taking a step back. It's not like a full-blown retirement because he still has other content that he will be putting out, but he won't be using his main channel the way he has been. And this is one of those moments where you hang his jersey in the rafters here on YouTube's Hall of Fame. He has really made history with his channel. And now he's reached the point in his life where he wants to wind it down and focus on his own happiness as opposed to constantly be thinking about work and producing the videos. And there's actually quite a bit I want to talk about on that subject, so let's go ahead and get into it.
This isn't the standard YouTuber burnout apology video, and it's not, oh, woe is me, I'm leaving forever. I'm going somewhere with this. Literally.
This is one of those super rare situations where an online content creator gracefully departs and moves on from the content that they've created for the last decade. Typically, in a situation like this, with a channel as successful as Tom's, it ends with some fucking septic tank explosion where it's this massive shitstorm of controversy and scandal that leads to their channel just being abandoned or the creator leaves. Usually it's just standard protocol for a channel of this size to end with some kind of big mess, some hoopla. But not in this case. Tom Scott sails into the sunset under his own terms here. As he states right away, this isn't a burnout apology video. He's not trying to be woe is me, as he says. He's not trying to make himself seem like some kind of victim of anything. He's not out here with some kind of douchey send-off where he's like, you know, for too long now I've been suffering from success. I've got way too much money in my pocket and it's making my legs sore lugging it around, so I gotta take a step back. It's nothing like that. He is extraordinarily grateful for the 10 years he spent on the platform making this content, and he's taking a well-deserved, well-earned break from it all.
But I never missed a week. Sometimes a video would be a day or two early or late for one reason or another, but to my own satisfaction, which is ultimately the only thing I'm counting, there's been a video a week for 10 years. I never broke the streak.
He reflects on his humble beginnings. He says he's been trying to put content on the internet since 1999 and was never really sure if it would ever catch on. And then with YouTube, it did, clearly, in a huge way. Tom Scott has become one of the most, I'd say, influential educational channels on the entire platform, and has been for a long time now. His content has always been extremely high quality, obviously extremely consistent, posting once a week, without fail for an entire decade. What an incredible achievement. And this is not easy content that he's been producing by any means. It's not Weenie Hut Jr. shit. He's not just out here flicking boogers onto YouTube and calling it a day with just throwaway bloat content. He is thoroughly researching interesting topics, going to the location and showcasing some unforgettable moments. He has lived an incredible life over the last 10 years, and YouTube has just been lucky and blessed to have him. He has invited us onto his bosom to suckle, and man, how tasty it has been. But this is a well-deserved break that he is taking here. I'll go ahead and let him explain why he's doing this.
I can't keep this up. This is my dream job and I have a lot of fun doing it. I know I'm incredibly lucky, but a dream job is still a job, and it's a job that keeps getting bigger and more complicated, and I am so tired. There's nothing in my life right now except work. I could keep making bigger and better things, keep climbing the ladder, build a business, hire full-time employees, and end up as a manager. I could not do that. I could do less and be happier. So I'm taking a break.
I chopped it up a little bit here, but the message overall is a pretty clear one. Even though he has his dream job, it is still a job, and it's one that never ends. It's one that you have to constantly keep your foot on the gas. You can't start granny shifting. You gotta keep double clutching like you should, otherwise you might blow the welds off the fucking intake, as the great Dominic Toretto says. And Tom Scott has done this week after week after week for a decade, and understandably, he's tired. He's exhausted. He said he set out to do 10 years of that grind, and now that 10 years is up, and he's ready to take a breather from it all. He states that he had two options. One, going the traditional YouTuber businessman route, where he puts the suit on, he hires a bunch of miscellaneous teams to keep pouring gasoline on the fire, to keep that puppy burning and churning, to elevate the Tom Scott brand, and he'd end up as the manager. but he said that wasn't really an appealing option to him because he thinks he wouldn't like it, basically. So instead, he went with option 2, and in his words, do less and be happier. Which I think is a beautiful statement on it because at the end of the day, what's more important than your own personal happiness? He has his dream job, but he is constantly thinking about work and only work. There's no way that that is a healthy or happy way for him to continue living the rest of his life. So now that he accomplished his initial goal of doing this for 10 years, he's ready to explore the next chapter of his life where he's not constantly in work mode like he has been. And I think that is perfectly understandable, it's admirable, and nobody deserves it more than Tom Scott.
Sometime, I don't know when or if I come back, but when I do, it won't be weekly, at least not in this format, not here. This probably isn't goodbye, like not forever. The podcast I host, Lateral, is still going out weekly. My newsletter's still going out. The Plus channel will probably return at some point. There'll likely be new technical difficulties episodes. But right now, I need to spend time with people I hold dear. I need there to be things in my life that are not work, and it's been years since that's been true.
Now, like I said, he hasn't fully wiped his ass with the cyberspace or anything. He hasn't fully washed his hands from it and vanished. He's still going to be making content in some capacity, like his podcast that he mentioned, as well as his newsletter. And he did even say that this channel, his main channel, will have more content on it potentially in the future. As he said, it's not goodbye forever, he doesn't think. It's just right now, after 10 years, he achieved his goal and he needs a break. He needs to focus on things that aren't this. He then concludes the video with a very sincere and heartfelt montage of some very special moments throughout his 10 years on YouTube. Now, I'd like to talk about this in a broader scale on YouTube as a whole because Tom Scott's not the only channel of this size and this level of success we've seen kind of leave. And I'm only going to talk about the ones that did so on purpose, like they decided to, they weren't forced to. So I'm not going to be talking about like the scandalous ones that were put into an early grave. And I don't mean like they were assassinated. I don't mean like they stopped posting because they got fucking killed or something. Like, I meant more like Illuminati, the channel we recently talked about that completely collapsed and died because of a lot of horrible things that they were doing coming to light. And basically, controversies sunk the entire channel. That's obviously not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about situations like this where a YouTuber decides enough is enough, I'm ready to move on. Throughout the years on YouTube, there have been a lot of big channels that have, for one reason or another, decided to depart from the platform. So Tom Scott is the most recent one, but there have been many channels, even as of the last year, that are deciding to step away, like Tfue. 6 months ago, he announced that he was going to be stepping away from the internet. He did come back over the last month, but he took a 6-month hiatus. An OG example is Ray William Johnson, the most subscribed channel on the platform at one point in time, and while he was at the top of his game, announced, you know what, enough is enough, I'm fucking outski. So he peeled out, scooted sideways, and he took a long time off of the platform. Though I think there was a lot more behind the scenes that led to that. I don't know if that was entirely his own personal decision. I think there was a lot of weird things going on there, but it is another example of a massive YouTuber stepping away. Ray William Johnson also did come back pretty recently too, but the point is, a lot of these channels all share a couple things in common. One thing you're always going to see, the sentiment shared across all these channels, is that even though they have the dream job, and all of them recognize that what they do online is legitimately a wet dream of a profession, it does still have a very taxing effect on their mental health. Because it's constant. It doesn't stop. When you're an online content creator, not only do you need to consistently be there, you have to consistently do more and be better and elevate. Otherwise, you fall behind because it's the most competitive field on the planet because everyone has access to it. So you're competing with every single human being with a fucking internet connection that even has like a webcam or their phone. So a lot of content creators get stuck in the cycle of this pressure to improve and grow and innovate. And over time, it leads to them being miserable, and that leads to burnout, which I'm sure all of you have heard creators speak about time and time again. And I know that when YouTubers start talking on like the trials and tribulations of content creation, a lot of people will roll their eyes and get nauseous, because if you got lucky enough to have an internet career producing content, you have a lot of luxuries that aren't afforded to a normal, traditional job and someone working them. Most of the time you get to choose your own hours. You get to work on the projects you want to work on, and you don't have, your fucking ass under someone else's thumb forcing you to do things you don't want to. So there are a lot more benefits to working an online career creating content than a traditional job. It is significantly different. But that doesn't mean that it's always easy. There are still some trials and tribulations that are there, and yes, are different than a traditional job, but it doesn't mean that it's all sunshine and rainbows. Someone like Tom Scott, producing this level of quality consistently every week for 10 years, clearly that is going to be the majority of his life. He doesn't have the time to spend doing other things that he'd want to do because he has to keep focusing on this. And eventually it reaches the point where it's no longer as much fun as it used to be, and you want to do other things feeling trapped or suffocated by this, and eventually you reach the decision like, hey, let's take a breather. But online, a breather is sometimes an outright death sentence to your online career, which again is another thing that makes creators very hesitant to take any level of break for their own mental health, because it could spell disaster for them. And that's not even being exaggeratory. I talked about this during the Tfue announcement of his break. Streamers have this in a very big way. The most important part about being a successful top-tier streamer is being live every day, 5 to 10 hours a day, basically. Just being alive, being there is the most important part. I mentioned this last time, but I went from a daily streamer streaming between like 3 and 6 hours a day to taking a couple of breaks because it got to be a bit much. I did that daily grind of streaming for 5 straight years, and I averaged about like 14 to 15,000 viewers, and I had around 26,000 subs. This year, I think it was April, I'm already getting foggy on the months, but I took 4 days off, and I still had around 26,000 subs. When I came back after a 4-day break, I had 18,000 subs, about. I lost 8,000 subs from being away for 4 days, and I never got that back. If you take breaks in this field, that audience will go somewhere else to get their fix. They'll go somewhere else to get that, comfort streamer or comfort content, whatever. So it leads to people just trapping themselves into this never-ending grind, constantly just being there and trying to grow or do different things or innovate and whatever, and just never actually being happy anymore doing it. So it takes a lot of strength, a lot of courage to do what Tom Scott has done here, to recognize that it's time that he focuses on himself and his own mental well-being, and as he said, do less and be happier. So nothing but the best wishes for Tom Scott going forward. And I just wanted to touch on the overall subject of big YouTubers or content creators eventually taking steps back or winding down or even just outright moving on from their platform and content they've created. Just wanted to go into it a little bit here. So yeah, that's really about it. See ya.